alcoholic. My name's Ken. I'm with the Red Fox Group in Cambridge.
And my name's Mike C, and I'm an alcoholic from Cambridge at Vision for You.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike. So, like she said, we have a thing. I don't know if we have a thing. He might have a thing. He didn't tell me about it. He doesn't have a thing. So, but Mike and I have spoken together several times, and our thing is that we just kind of get up here and we just talk. We try to engage in a conversation with people and with each other and sort of play off each other and sort of just run how it is. I used to plan my talks when I was, sort of earlier on in recovery, and that drove me nuts. It's funny, I was listening to a guy, kind of overheard as I was passing a conversation in the lobby, and the man was saying that I made the mistake of listening to speaker tapes all week, right? And I think he was a speaker, and so he's trying to gear himself up, and I'm like, man, I've been there. I've absolutely been there, and then I find myself trying to remember the cool things that I heard on the speaker tapes, and then it's like, well, that's not you, Ken. You're trying to regurgitate information that you heard and things like that. But I think we all kind of go through that. So, through my experience at least, I've found that just kind of hopping up here and just letting it kind of fall out kind of takes up the time. You know what I mean? That's sort of the way that I approach it anyway. Yeah. Anything to add there, brother?
Absolutely. A practical application of the 12 steps, that's a tough one. I don't think it's a very easy topic to sort of attack because my journey really changed and morphed over the years, and from the time of early, coming into these rooms with absolutely no idea what was wrong with me. I'm like dying of this disease. I'm about to lose my family. There's a lot of things I might flush a business down the toilet. I'm in very poor health. I'm a 40-year-old man, and I can't seem to put any kind of I can't make sense of life at all. It's just not working, and I end up wandering in these rooms with hoping to find some kind of answer. I've been seeing a psychiatrist for a couple of years. She had lots of ideas, and I was pretty mad at her because she wouldn't tell me exactly what to do, and I was paying her a lot of money, and that really made me angry. And I was about to embark on some kind of journey that was going to take the next 15 years and continues to unfold. And I had no way to know that at the time. I had no way to understand alcoholism. I had no idea that I had an allergy to alcohol. So I'm sitting in a park with, I've called the hotline. I'm sitting in a park with another alcoholic, and he starts telling me about the allergy. And it was like somebody turned a light on in the room that was, it just aligned the last 25 years of my life of making these plans to never touch it again, or to stop doing that, or to stop disappointing her so much, and I would always end up in the same place, wake up the next morning with no idea how did I do that again, and that's how I walked into these rooms with I was very confused,
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Much like Mike, I had no idea what was wrong with me. It looked a lot like I had a drinking problem. That's exactly what it appeared to be. I drank a lot, and when I drank, I did foolish things, and those foolish things ended me up in places that I didn't want to be in, that I wasn't particularly allowed to go out of if I wanted to, at the times that I wanted to. And, so it really did shine a light on what was going on with me when I finally did sit down with somebody who knew this book and knew this program and knew how to approach a newcomer and speak to the newcomer so that the message of depth and weight took hold. And the allergy was a really big one for me. It really explained to me why it was I said I was going to go to the bar and drink 2 pints and have a pound of wings, and I would close the bar, and then I would do the same thing the next day, and over and over and over again. And it explained to me why it was I could not control the alcohol once it went into my system. And the other part that really hit home for me was why it was that despite all my desire to stop, and despite all the reasons to stop, and despite all the wish to not have my actions harm the other people around me who I loved so much, why was it that I couldn't not do that anymore? Why was it that I left the psych ward at the Vancouver General Hospital when I was 25 years old after a suicide attempt with a stomach full of charcoal after having been free from any and all substances for 2 or 3 days? I end up back at my mother's house in Elora, Ontario, 3 days after a suicide attempt, and the only thing I can come up with to deal with the way that I'm feeling at that point is to walk across the street and sit at the bar and order a beer. Why is it when I'm sober and I feel the worst about myself and I know exactly what probably the worst step to do right now would be? I know it. How come I can't stop my feet from walking to that bar, sitting down, and calling that bartender over and ordering a beer in that state? So when I sat down and I was sort of taken through this work, it illustrated for me this mental obsession that we deal with. So Mike hit on the allergy, we're hitting on the obsession here, and then that brings in and is completely wrapped up with the spiritual malady and this discomfort that I constantly live with, that I didn't even really know I needed relief from until I found that relief at about 13 and 14 years old. And I wasn't sure even what I was relieving at the time. I just knew that it felt better than it did when I was sober. Right? And for the next decade or so, and a little bit longer, 15 years, I couldn't stop returning to that and seeking that feeling again, you know? So yeah, like Mike said, I mean, the practical applications of the steps, I feel like, is a fairly broad subject, you know what I mean? And I think that every one of us in here has our own way of grabbing onto certain things that we learn throughout this process, not only the step process, but hanging around people for however long we're in here for, and sort of just absorbing, you know, what other people are doing and bumping up against everybody else who's making this thing work, and just kind of picking those things up as we go along, you know. One of the things that I often find myself saying recently is that I think that this whole program is about ratting myself out. This entire thing for me right now is about just taking what's going on in here and putting it there and going, look at that. What do you think of that? You know what I mean? This is what's going on inside of me, you know? And, doing that with Mike or anybody else who's willing to talk to me at the time, you know, and having them say, you know, you're insane, man. Please don't call me again. Never does anybody say that, right? What they say is like, yeah, man, me too. You know, like, me too, man. You know, here's what happens to me in those situations. You know what I mean? And you get this unifying feeling. You know what I mean? And that's what I think the entire thing is. When I come to an idea came to me early on in sobriety through a set of CDs. You might have heard of it, A New Pair of Glasses, by Chuck C. And he says that really the only problem that we have is separation. So the answer is unity, right? And so I think that any way we can possibly come closer to unifying ourselves with our fellows is going to bring us closer into the answer. And anything that we do to separate ourselves is going to bring me further away from that answer. And so I find myself constantly doing this. You know, I'm closer and I'm further away, and I'm closer and I'm further away, and that sort of has relevance to, you know, whatever my level of willingness is at that moment to just expose what's going on inside of me. You know, just throw it out there on the table, right? So that's wrapped up in, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? I think my program really launched into a new level when I started actually practicing Step 10. actively practicing step 10. I was sitting around in a room, in my living room at the time, and there was 4 other guys, and we were going through this book, and we read 84, where it says that we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God to remove them. We call somebody and tell them. We make up for it if we have to, and then we turn our attention and our thoughts to somebody that we can help. And then when we read that paragraph, all 4 of us kind of stopped and went, is anybody actually doing that right now? Like, is any of us actually doing that? None of us could honestly say that we were. So right then and there, we sort of made this pact with each other, right? We're going to become each other's immediately buddies. And, by 9 a.m. the next morning, all of us had called each other because we were, kind of pissed off at everybody. And, it was like we had already had something, but that started this, like, another level of just taking what's in here in the dark and bringing it out into the light where it can lose a bit of its power, Anyway, that's a little bit of my practical application right now. So.
Thanks, Ken. So I feel like we're really talking about step 1 right now, and which is, in my opinion, one of the most important things to really look at is that it's over. I was like a 42-year-old guy when I took my last drink, and it was over. It had been over for a long time, and Carl Jung talks about alcoholics are kind of God-thirsty. And when you lay up what used to happen to me when I would take alcohol into my system, it would be, I'm this wrapped up guy, I'm angry, I'm mad at her, I'm mad at work, I'm just mad about everything. I walk into the bar, I put a little bit of alcohol in, and all of a sudden, everybody's beautiful. I could be sitting beside anybody and I just absolutely love them. I'm not worried about money. I'm not worried about how much is in the bank account or if the boss is probably going to talk to the owner tomorrow about the fact that I keep coming in late all the time. I'm not thinking about that anymore. I'm just thinking about, I'm in the moment. Alcohol would like bring me to the moment, the wonderful moment of now. And when I wasn't in the wonderful moment of now, I was usually very painfully sober. So I would like put together some sobriety, and it was painful, and everyone around me was like, clapping because I was doing so good, and inside I'm just coming right out of my skin, and that was illustrated to me. I hadn't had any alcohol for probably 9 months, and I'm like sitting in a family event. It was Thanksgiving, and I have my 2 toddlers and my wife and my father-in-law. Like, I'm absolutely miserable. I just hate everyone in the room, and because I've been sober for the last 9 months, for crying out loud, and don't you see how hard I'm trying? And everybody's stupid, And oh yeah, and my father-in-law looks at me and says, "Would you like some wine?" And I said, Vince said, "I'm not drinking right now. Don't you know that? And why would you offer me something like that?" And he said, "Well." He said what 9 out of 10 people don't have what we have. And he said to me, "You should be able to make up a decision to only have one and have one. That's what real men do." And that made a lot of sense to me. Even though I have this overwhelming stack of evidence of what a terrible cosmic idea this is for me to put alcohol into my system again. And, but it's, I had to do what I had to do, and I put some of that alcohol in, and all of a sudden everybody in the room became wonderful. Just like, it was like this curtain just of wonderfulness, just and everybody's wonderful. And so being God-thirsty and not knowing that I actually am that. So I am very spiritually sick, and I have no idea. I'm allergic to alcohol, and I have no idea. And I don't know what's wrong. And this life looks like I just accidentally put my skin on backwards, and I'm trying to, make it work somehow, and it's just not working. And a lot of us wander into these rooms, and we've talked to the doctor. Maybe they've given us something for that, and that's not working either. And it's like every direction I'm just running into the same thing over and over and over again. It's just sort of like, Groundhog Day. And I'll put together 3 months, I'll put together 9 months, then I'll do it again. And everybody will be really disappointed in Mike again. So anyway, I won't bore you with all the things that happened because we don't need to talk about that here today. I finally came to this spot where I was absolutely desperate, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I continued to relapse for the next 2 years. But this man came and sat with me. I have a little machine shop that I still have today because of this, and he explained self-will to me in a way that it was like I'm living in a matrix and nothing's real and everything's fake, and I don't know how to live this life like I am. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be. I don't know where to stand. I can't use alcohol because every time I do that, then this happens, and I can't use other things because every time I do that, then that happens, and every time I try to stay sober, I can't do that either. And he starts explaining self-will to me of this idea that I'm an actor. I'm an actor who's trying to run the whole show, and it's not in a small way. Like, he really got my attention. And we talked for 2 or 3 hours, and he left, and I opened up the back door of my shop. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and it's pouring rain. And I'm sitting at the back of my shop looking out the back door, and a thought came into my mind, is I wonder how deep self-will is. Like, how deep is it? What is it? What does it mean when we talk about self-will, that I'm an actor? And that started that was 2009, and that started a very long journey for me that continues to unfold today. And if you listen to, with the right pair of ears to the story of Adam and Eve, they're talking about self-will. They're talking about the chatter that heaven on earth is possible, but we live in hell because we're all wandering around, all 8 billion of us, with a dream of separation. We think we're all separate. We're all in our separate little houses with our separate little boxes, with our separate lives, doing our separate things. Just imagine what we're doing right here, right now is very, very old. A whole bunch of people sitting in a room telling stories. We all have a story. We have to have one. But our story, my story, started when I was a very small child, like all of our stories. And the programming of our parents and the world and all the things around us started to, if I want to have friends, I have to act like that. If I want to be a good boy for mom and dad, I have to act like that. If I want to be a good student, I have to act like that. Everyone sort of get with what I'm saying right now? So without realizing it, we become very, very, very good actors. We're not trying to, my parents weren't trying to hurt me. We're all doing this. We're all in this idea of we have to have this appearance. It has to look a certain way. I have a veneer, and it must look like this. And so without realizing it, I navigated my way to the age of 40, and I wasn't authentic in any way, and I had no idea. And I wasn't really going to figure that out for probably another 10 years. So when we say a practical application of these steps, for the first 5 years, I was running around holding this big book, and I was going to do it right, and other people were going to do it wrong, and I could right? I was going to cite things out of that book, and I was going to it really looked like it was about knowledge to me, and this idea of being the actor started to unfold for me. Want to add to that?
Awesome, man. Yeah, thanks, Mike. So to follow along with this sort of unity and separation idea that we're talking about here. If you were to watch me over the course of my life, even well before I started drinking, but certainly once I started using and drinking, and you were to just kind of watch my path and just see the way I acted, you would say to yourself, I think anybody would, that guy really doesn't want anything good to happen to him in his life. And the reason for that was because I always seemed to, anything good that came along, I either blew the opportunity, I didn't go for it if it was there in front of me, or I did everything I possibly could to remove myself from that situation, right? So this sense of separation that I have my entire life, right? I can remember as a little kid just kind of thinking to myself, at some point, Ken, you're probably going to be asked to leave. You know, better get your bags packed because, you know, the bottom's going to fall out of this at some point, and it's probably going to be pretty soon. This impending sense of doom that doesn't really have any basis in external evidence, you know, it's just what I feel, you know. And then what happens to me over the course of my life is that sense that I live with starts to manifest itself physically, right? I start getting kicked out of school, I start getting kicked out of my home, I start getting pulled out of society and put behind bars, I start jumping on buses and jumping on planes and going all over the place, and so the sense of separation starts to actually physically manifest itself, and then it gets to get validated, right? See, Ken, you don't belong in that school either. See, Ken, they don't want you around over here because now you're over there. You know what I mean? And I start behaving in ways that bring that sort of sense of separation about in a physical way, right? And that's just, I think, something that I'm seeking. Like Mike is talking about this thirst for God, right? And what I believe that is a thirst for unity, this thirst for this feeling of I belong somewhere, right? And I just couldn't find that anywhere. Even though I did, right? Like, I use this example sometimes. One of my sports when I was younger was swimming. And I was very good. Like, I was a very good swimmer. I can say that and not feel like I'm, you know, BSing you here. And, you know, like the last 2 years of my swimming, I didn't lose a race. I didn't lose one race in 2 years. And I never felt like I belonged on that team. Like, never once did I feel like I actually belonged with those people, even though I clearly did. You know, in every other way. Right? But never once was that feeling there. I found it hard to speak to my own teammates. You know what I mean? And so Mike's talking about this feeling of, or this question that he walks around with, like, how deeply does self-will go? Right? How deep is self-will? How old is self-will? How far down does that run in me? Right? One day I was in the woods with my dog, and I, with that sort of thought, kind of floated into my mind, and then I asked myself, I wonder how deeply unity goes, right? And so talking about this Adam and Eve story, right? Like, so you can look at it like we're talking about self-will, right? We're also talking about unity there, right? And the contrast between the two. What happens when the separation becomes paramount? The idea and the feeling and the sense of separation becomes paramount in my life, and what that looks like. Hell, right? And the contrast to that and what it looks like when unity is paramount in my life, and that's heaven. And I think that's what we get to experience here. We get to experience these little hints of heaven, or big hints of heaven, right? And the more and more that we get together with each other in these ancient circles, and we tell our stories, and we all do this, when somebody's telling a story, you know what I mean? And we laugh at these tragic experiences that nobody else laughs at, you know? It brings us closer together, right? And it does that not because that's me and Mike and anybody else who's up here calling you guys in, right? We're calling you guys in here, you know? And you're coming. Right? You're coming. Whether you want to or not. You can't deny when it hits you here, right? Like, the last thing I ever wanted was to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been coming to AA since I'm 11 years old, and I did not want to be a member of my mom's club. You know what I mean? But for a long, long time, a long, long time, I knew that if it was ever going to happen, it was going to happen here. If I was ever going to get sober, it was going to happen here. And I hated that. I hated that, but I knew it and I couldn't deny it. And the reason why I knew that was because I'd been in these rooms and I had heard some people speak. And when I heard them speak, it hit me right here. And it was undeniable, right? Even though I did a heck of a job trying to deny it. Whenever I ended up in that spot where we end up in, where we're willing to consider something else, AA was always where I went. Right? AA was always where I went. For a long time, I wasn't willing to do anything in AA, but I knew that that's where I could go, right? And that was because of the stories, right? That was because of the stories that were being told. But I tried to exhaust all kinds of other perceived options, right? We have two options. To go under the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we can, or to accept spiritual help, right? And is there anything else there? Like, it's a really short, like, or. Nothing else. No. That's the or, right? And so what part of my delusion was that I had any other options. And the thing about options is that they're valid and they work, if they're actually options for you, right? And what I found out through stubborn experience was that I did not have any other ones. I did not have any other ones. I had to like knock them off the list through the process of elimination, right? Before I was finally cornered with those two, right? And then I realized this deeply, right? At one point I just went, that's all I've ever had. I've never had any other options, and if I hadn't taken that option when it was first offered to me and really, went at it with the, vigor that we go at things with, I probably would have gotten sober a lot earlier, but, things have to happen the way they have to happen. But those are my two options, separation or unity. What are you going to pick, right? That's the question in step 2. What's your choice, man? And so with this idea and this question in mind, like how deeply does unity go? One of the things that I think happens in Alcoholics Anonymous and anywhere else people get together is that we other the others. People that aren't like us, right? And there's a lot of talk, alcoholics and the earth people, or the normies, or whatever you hear that say. And as far as I'm concerned, that's just more separation. Right? I work with people in very close quarters all day, every day, and have for a very long time. I worked in a treatment center for youth for 14 years, for addicted youth for 10 years, for 14 and 18-year-old youth. And for the last 7 years or so, I've been a personal trainer. So I'm constantly working with people, and most of them are not alcoholics. And a lot of them speak about the same things that we speak about. So this dialogue about alcoholics and normal people, I stopped that. Right? Yes, we don't drink like them, clearly. But the human condition is the human condition, right? And the more I can bring myself together with humans, right? Because that's the opposite of what I did, right? My entire life, and it only created the problem and perpetuated the problem. The more I can unify myself with all humans, right? All beings, the more chance I have at experiencing this thing more consistently, because we're like this, right? Like sometimes I'm just like, I'm on fire, man. It's spiritual, like, there's nothing more spiritual to me right now. Or, like, kind of want to die, and I don't feel connected to anyone, including my own children. You know what I mean? Like the people who are closest to me, right? I can feel farther away from the ones who are closest to me at any point in time. So the more we can do this, and the more I can bring into my consciousness that I am not apart from, right? Then the more, I live in that spot, right? Amen. It's your turn now.
Okay, so while Ken was talking, that's sort of what makes what we're trying to do here work. Is he's saying, and I can listen to him for like a minute or two, and then sort of bounce off what Ken's saying. I was thinking about Carl Jung and Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard, his parents have a ton of cash. He's like dying. He's trying everything to get sober. They sent him all over the eastern seaboard to like try to get their son well, and he ends up sitting with Carl Jung in Switzerland. Spends a whole bunch of time with them, does some really great work, understands his mind really, really well, gets on the train to head back to Paris to like go tell mom and dad how proud they should be, and someone walks up to him and says, "Would you like a drink, sir?" And he says, "What we say." And so when he came back, Carl Jung did a very important thing that if it hadn't happened, I don't think we would be sitting here right now. He said, "I can't help you." He said, like something, I've heard of these exceptions that to me are a phenomenon where ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces for these people, need to be cast aside. And that's really what we're doing. Like when we talk about a practical application of these steps, just imagine like everything that about our stories, all of our stories, all 8 billion of us have our story. Our whole world is built on stories that have been passed forward and forward and forward and forward. This is how you do it. This is how it looks. But I have to dismantle that. They need to be cast aside. Cast aside. Like I have to let go of the story of who I think I am. That's been a process for me. So for the first 5 years, me walking around with that big book, doing it the way that I was doing it, saved my life. And it really looked like if you listen to the words that we're talking about in a arrival point, like I'm going to do the 12 steps just perfectly, and at that juncture right there, I'll cross some kind of threshold and I'll just be happy all the time. Anyone else have that kind of? That didn't happen to me. That did not happen to me. So this whole journey for me has been about many surrenders along the way. I have hit many different walls. Where at year 5, it's like because if you listen to that book the right way, it's talking about an arrival point. I don't think they meant to do that because they were trying to be bad. It was just how they wrote it. I love that book. That book saved my life. But there is this sort of arrival point that's sort of being dangled, and yes, there is an arrival point. When I look back behind me at the 12 years, I wouldn't trade those 12 years for anything. If you would have followed me around with a camera, there were some less than spiritual moments. Absolutely, come on, I've made a lot of this whole idea that mistakes, so that's one of my stories, is that you can't make mistakes, and you can't be seen making one. So this what Ken was talking about is to tell on ourselves is the main purpose to me of a sponsorship is that I'm tabling with other people that are where I'm at, what I'm really doing, how's it really going. Because we're so good at saying everything's fine. How you doing? Everything's fine. I yelled at the top of my lungs to nobody in particular all the way here in my car, but I'm fine. Right? Or I'm very angry and I don't even know why. I could say that. I could tell the truth, truth, willingness. So another thing that I was thinking while Ken was talking was the whole God idea. I had a history there, like a lot of us do, of somebody had tried to impress upon me some kind of idea about that when I was very young, and I sort of carried that with me my whole life, and that was holding me back from really seeing, I was having a hard time connecting step 1 to step 2 to this idea that there's a higher power. Well, I just wasn't connecting to it because I just had some old ideas, some old scaffolding about the way that I think life is. More things to let go of. That's been a process for me over the last 12 years. This thing's a process. It's about letting go. It's about letting go of what you don't want to let go of and walk straight into what you don't really want to look at. So like year 10 for me, year 12, I'm still coming up with all kinds of like anger and of course anger means that I'm afraid. So I'm still running into these things and I'm sort of getting mad at myself like, hey, hold on a second here. Like I was supposed to, like I keep running into this idea that I have this old agreement that I'm not supposed to be doing that anymore. Like that's not human. Like for me to have anger or to look at it or to try to apply these steps to my life, that's the whole spectrum. That's everything. That means that I just bring all my flaws and everything that I am and all the mistakes that I've made, and I just like bring it to us. And another thing I was thinking while he was talking was one of the things that I think that sort of happens is that we tend to make this about one person. Like there's one person at the front of the room and they're telling us how it is, and everyone in here has brought their energy to this circle. And that's so powerful. And this idea that I have to be right, I mean, anyone in here like being right? I love being right. I mean, I don't even care if I'm right. I just want you to actually think I was right. Like, that's okay, So, like, this idea of everyone brought what they, like, you have all brought your energy to this room, and we are one thing. That's how I see it. And when I start saying things like that, the energy that I feel is just amazing. We are one being, and we have this, I believe, cultural amnesia today. We're all walking around with our phone, and it just seems to be like we're so separated. And it's no wonder that we've, I don't know, we get lost. And I don't know, you want to add to this?
Sure, brother.
Thanks, man.
Mike talking about, going through the process of the 12 steps and again to the process of 12 steps. More and more we get to know this big book and this program. I performed this neat little magic trick when I was about 3 years sober. I went through the steps again, and it was a very in-depth sort of process with the big book that really, really took a long time, and there was a lot of learning involved, and there was a lot of just memorization and stuff like that, and I loved it. Like, I absolutely loved it. And it did launch my program into another level. But what it also did was separate me from Alcoholics Anonymous. I did this neat little trick where I took the big book of AA and I pulled myself out of AA with it. It was really interesting. It was a very interesting little trick that I pulled. And so even in the place where I have felt more a part of, this idea of separation took hold, right? And it used my idea of being right, my knowledge, right? I know more than you. I know where that is in the book. Turn right to that page, no problem. I can blow your mind with, I can listen to what you just said, and I can reference exactly what you just said in this big book. Watch me do it. And we did it. We had meetings where it was like, at a meeting where we're blowing newcomers' minds. They're like, oh, you guys are amazing. All this stuff, you know what I mean? And any meeting that didn't have the big book on the table all the time was not a good meeting, and they were killing people. And it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And I used the big book of AA to pull me away from the people in AA. It was neat. And so that's how deeply this thing runs, right? So when Mike asks the question, how deep is self-will? Man, it's deep. Man, it is deep, and it's not going away. That's another thing that I have really, really come to accept over the years, is that that thing is not going away, right? So the more that we can get together in these circles, the more we can shine light on it, right? Because I do believe in light, and I do believe that there's things counter to light, right? And I know what those things show up like in my life. Thus far, anyway, I have the history to look at it, right? So the more we can pull what's dark out and stick it out into the light, the less power it has, and the more practice. It's just like any other muscle, right? The more reps we do, the stronger that tendency is going to become, But through that process, right? So through that process, I went into step 3 again, and we got to step 3, and it was me and this fella, and his name was also Mike, and he's gone now. We have this thing inside of us that is so powerful that it'll it'll take your sponsor out too, So this is no joke, I believe this thing is living. I believe it's inside of us, and I believe it grows with us. Right? It uses all of my little idiosyncrasies and all my emotional upheavals and all my experiences and all my likes and dislikes, and it gets to know me, and it molds itself around me personally, and it manipulates. Right? And it lays in wait, right? And it's amazing to watch this thing, right? But so is the other thing. The other thing is in there too, right? This love, right? This all-encompassing love. And that's why when we are with that, we know it, right? You know it here. You know it all over you and the tips of your fingers, right? We got to step 3, me and Mike, and there's these 2 big, muscly, tattooed guys on our knees in his living room, alone, together, with our hands clasped, saying the 3rd step prayer, right? Under a picture of the Virgin Mary, because he was quite Catholic, my friend Mike. And it was an interesting little scene, and that was not lost on me at that point, And then he said, okay, Ken, now it's your job to think of a place you're going to go, and you're going to go do this on your own. You're going to do that prayer, you're going to take this prayer, you're going to go find a place that means something to you, and you're going to go do this on your own, right? And I knew exactly where I was going to go. I grew up in a very beautiful little town with river and cliffs and all kinds of stuff. I knew exactly where I was going to go. And so I woke up early the next morning. It was early in the summer, late in the spring, something like that. And I drove to work an hour early, and I went down to this place, down at the bottom of this gorge, and there's all these great big flat rocks in the middle of the river. And I laid my sweater out on one of these rocks, and I got down on my knees, and I started to just be there, And I started to think about what my task was. And then I said the prayer, and then I said it again, and I said it again. I said it in a few different ways. I just kept saying this prayer over and over and over in my head. And then all of a sudden I could feel the water underneath the rock coming up, all the way through my body. Everything started kind of sparkling. I could hear and see and feel every bug in every tree. And this entire place lit up. And at that point, I went from knowing that I'm supposed to believe in something and praying on a regular basis, to the knowledge and the feeling of God in me and in you all the time, always, never not. And that's never left me. I can feel it in the back of my neck right now, and sometimes it's down here and sometimes it's up there, but it's always there. So this feeling of unity has been a tangible experience in my life on many, many different occasions. That's just one of them. And so I look for those. Right? So where I was constantly sort of naturally looking for why I'm different, right, and why it's not going to work for me, and why great for you. I'm really super happy for you guys. Great, awesome. Never going to work for me though, right? That was my pursuit. So now, when I'm awake enough, my pursuit is seeing unity, trying to see it in any way it possibly can be seen, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Just like separation is. Right? Because we're all living left brain, right brain. We're all doing this thing, right? None of us are any different. We're all the same thing. We all have the same thing. If I got it, you got it. And so, I'm just constantly seeking this feeling of unity, this sense of being alive, right? And when that washes over me, all the pain in my body goes away. This heaviness and this kind of what's next kind of constant question is gone, and it's light and it's beautiful, and there's a smile, and you're in this wonderful moment like Mike was talking about, right? Practical application of the steps looks like a million different things for me right now, and what it really, I think, and this is just kind of coming to me, is realizing that the only reason why I'm able to even consider the idea of being a part of something is because of this work, is because of what happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous 15 years ago or so. And everything else that has happened after that is because of that, right? All the good things in my life have happened after I started praying. I wouldn't let myself do that. So practical application of the steps is realizing that I get to, drive here today and listen to Motown music with my mom. It's her favorite. And we get to sing The Temptations and Marvin Gaye together, as we're driving, and she gets to tell me about, when she went to see The Temptations in the Four Tops for the millionth time. You know what I mean? But I get to listen to that story again, you know what I mean? And I get to be happy for that, because what else is there,
Thanks, Ken. While Ken was talking, I was just, you could hear his story. You could sort of see the transition of where he was when he first came in, and which worked for him at the time, and then it as you seek, this thing begins to morph into more and more, and we begin to develop a real idea of a higher power that's tangible, that's right there, I mean, we're literally. I looked this up last night at 4 o'clock in the morning. The Earth is turning 1,000 miles an hour, and it's hurtling through space at 66,000 miles an hour. Anyone feel like we're headed that fast? So we're on this crazy journey, and who are we really? What are we really capable of as a species? We do a lot of human doing, but not a lot of human being. And this work that looked like it wouldn't work, that only cost $1, that frustrated me immensely over the last 12 years, 15 years, saved my life, gave me a connection to this earth and the people in it. While he was talking, I was thinking about a conversation that I had with my 8-year-old son while I was sitting there, in my cups, and my son's drawing a picture, and it's 2006, and I'm trying to spend time with him, but I'll sort of listen to what you're saying, and I'll hum along, and I'll nod, and I'll shake my head, but I'm not really there. I'm really waiting for you to go to bed so I can, do what I do. That's how I have these 2 kids that desperately want me to see them, and all I can do is make it about me. I'm this wrapped up guy that has no idea how to connect with anything. I don't know how to give love. I don't know how to receive love. And this little kid looks at me and he said, "Dad," he said, "ideas." This is the God's honest truth. He said, "Ideas are like seeds, and your brain is kind of like dirt, and really good ideas grow into beautiful flowers, and really bad ideas clog up your brain with all kinds of weeds." And I'm sitting there. This is an 8-year-old kid, and he's smarter than me. And I realized, I am missing my life. This right over my head. This is happening. That's when the whole step 1 thing for me started to take shape. Was I really saw that if I don't find a way to do something here, I'm not going to know this kid. I don't have any connection to anything around me. I'm in this dream of separation. I'm trying to make it look like this. Remember how exhausting that was? Right? It has to look a certain way, and I'm like trying to make sure this particular group doesn't meet that particular group, and it's oh my goodness, it's like just this whole dog and pony show of like trying to like keep it together and make it look like I meant to do what I did again, over and over and over again. And I have these kids, and I come home and they just wanted to climb all over me. Dad's home, like this hero in their life, and I'm like, I can't connect with it. That's what like drove me into this room, and over the last 12 years, what looked like it wouldn't work, what looked like I was doing it wrong, and probably was, but like doing it wrong it saved my life. I had to do it wrong to hit another surrender, Like, does anyone in here want to have a spiritual experience? You're having one right now. What you're looking for, you're looking with. You're a divine being on this earth, having a spiritual experience right now. And our idea of separation talks us into this, we have to go find it. You're it. And mistakes are just fine. Every mistake I ever made brought me right here, which is where I was meant to be. And so this idea that you got to do it just right, or you can't be seen doing it wrong like that, or And so today, the 12 steps. I sponsor a lot of guys, and we hold a men's meeting, and it's so profound, and I see so many times like these people come in the room and they're not willing to let go, and I can see they're not willing to let go, and I can't help them with that part, because nobody can do this for us, but this, like, how do I do this just right? And I'm like looking through the book, and I'm like trying to, my first sponsor said to me, whether you like it or not, that your alcoholism will do these steps for you. And what I heard him say was, other people will do this wrong, but you and me will do it right. That's not what he said. He said alcoholism will do these steps for you. And so this like chattery mind that's like, like a kid that just drank 7 cans of pop and he's locked in the closet is like chattering in my head the whole time for the first 5 years that I'm trying to do this work. And he was absolutely right. And each surrender that's happened to me along the way has enriched my life tremendously. And none of them were very fun. But here we are. And so this idea that like suffering is a bad thing. The same guy that originally sponsored me, we were sitting in a men's meeting about 3 weeks ago, and he said, "Why would you want to get rid of resentments? Like having resentments is like God's way of showing us what we need to work on. It's right there. Like what areas in your life are actually bearing fruit? What are you really mad about? There you go. There's your work. It's right there." And I thought, wow, just one more thing to sort of illustrate this idea that I've had this idea of this arrival point that wasn't real. And that's okay. I had to do it the way that I did it to arrive here. And hopefully I'll just keep hitting more surrenders. But, I don't know if I could say that name. You want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah. I did want to add to it, and then everything's sitting up from here to there. It's going. Talk about that men's meeting that Mike just spoke about. So what we're watching in that meeting is how powerful unity is and what it can do for somebody's life, And we're watching men who have not been able to watch this in all Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I'm not saying that this is what happens in our meeting. You should come. But again, what we get to watch is this sense of unity, bringing people together in a powerful enough way that it can actually do something about alcoholism. Where thus far, nothing has been able to do anything about alcoholism. One of our guys who attends that meeting just hit a year, and he just got asked to be a sponsor. You know what I mean? Like this just happens. You know what I mean? So he's going to get to experience what, if anybody in this room has ever experienced by being a sponsor. You know what I mean? All the frustrations that holds, right? And, the fact that, you start to realize that you have no power over this other human being whatsoever, and they're drinking even though I'm trying so hard and I didn't sponsor them hard enough, and whatever other kind of BS that we tell ourselves. He's going to get to go through all of that stuff, right? You know what I mean? And the main thing that's brought that there is this challenging of his idea that he didn't belong, right? That it wasn't for him, It's for him too. It's for you too. It's for me. It's for you. And I think that that's a big piece of this whole telling on myself thing. So to come back around to that, right? Is so if I'm telling on myself, that's sort of me opening myself up to have whatever idea is taking hold right now challenged. Right? Have whatever my story is challenged by somebody else, right? Because as long as I keep my mouth shut, I really believe that this thing that lives inside of me that we call alcoholism really only needs one or two things, and that's for me to be alone and to shut my mouth. As long as I am alone and quiet, it really gets to work on me. I get to be right about all my ideas and how wrong everybody else is and how much of a victim I am and how hard done by I am and whatever. Right? I get to be right and I get to be angry, and that's a neat little place to be for alcoholism, right? And as long as I just keep my mouth shut and I keep myself just outside the circle far enough for people not to ask me any damn questions, right? Then it really, really, really gets to work on me. So if I'm telling on myself and I'm being honest, part of that is me going, so, what do you think, right or wrong? You know what I mean? And so I'm allowing whatever it is inside of me that, for so long I held as, gospel, right? My ideas are my ideas and I'm just going to do it, to be challenged, right? And to consider the fact that I don't know what's going on. One of my earlier sponsors in this program said that to me. He said, are you able to walk around with at least the thought that, the way you're looking at things and the way you're seeing things and the way you're thinking about things might not actually be accurate? You know what I mean? Are you willing to constantly ask yourself that, is it possible that the way I'm seeing things out here isn't the entire truth, right? And, so like Mike was talking about, there's 8 billion of us out here all walking around with our own eyes and our own story about what's going on around here. So to have as many people and as many opportunities around me to challenge my ideas, or at least sometimes just to expose it. You ever had something going on inside you and you throw it out there finally and you just kind of chuckle at how ridiculous it sounds when you actually voice it? And it becomes really, really clear that it's not actually entirely true, or maybe not the best idea. As soon as you just go, right? So that's the power of the word, right? That's our word, right? It's something that no other being on this earth has, is this power to voice what's going on, right? And sometimes we can see the truth just simply by voicing it, and sometimes what the truth is not what we thought it was when it was in here 4 seconds ago, And that's a really cool thing, right? And you see, as I'm looking around here and everybody's doing this, right? So that's one of those things. That's one of those things, right? That's one of those unifying things, right? And so looking for those things and seeing them, that's cool stuff. One of my favorite lines is to regard ourselves as spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, right? That's a cool spot. If I can sit at the tip of the spear of God's ever-advancing creation. No one's ever been here before, including you. Like, no one's ever been where we are, where we are the cutting edge of the universe as it's unfolding right now. Can you imagine that? Like, it's literally, it's not unfolding in front of us. We're unfolding it. Like, we're moving forward with the universe, and nothing's ever been this far. That's a cool idea. That is a really cool idea. That's a way cooler idea than I don't belong anywhere and nobody likes me. Nothing's ever going to work for me. Like, spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation. Yeah, let's grab onto that stuff right there. I'll hang out there as long as I can. That's a really cool place to be. And challenging all of our ideas, challenging all of my ideas, about this big book, about who I am as a human being, as a man, as a father, as a partner, as a brother, as a son. As a guy who has a backyard. Like, what does my backyard look like? I don't know. Let's change it. It doesn't really blowing the lines off things, right? So, okay, back to practical application of the steps. For me, in my life right now, I've blown the lines off the box, which is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And they're just kind of all there, When I sponsor a new guy, do I open the book and take him through 1, 2, 3, 4? Yes. I do that because that's the process of Alcoholics Anonymous. But to bring that thing into my being, into the tips of my fingertips, right? The lines are blown off of that, right? And what that does is open it up. It makes it this really vast space that doesn't seem to have any boundaries, And that's not just the 12 steps. And so can I constantly challenge what I think is true about any of it?
Okay, so I've been given the 2-minute warning, so we're going to wrap it up. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much, everybody. And so, 2008, 2009, I have this crazy thing going on, and these kids that love me, and I can't connect to anything. And like, if you would have followed me around with the camera for the last, since then, I mean, it wasn't a postcard. And yet, these kids in their 20s, I have a profound relationship with my children. My wife and I managed to save our marriage. We're still together. I have a thriving business that employs 28 people. And I have no idea how any of that's even possible. And, from the very bottom of my heart, like, I am your brother. And I love every one of you. Thank you for having us here today. Thank you so much.